All right, hello everyone. I hope that you are having a good day so far. Okay, so today we're going to start talking about converting fractions to decimals to percents. And we're going to start with fractions first. So today we're going to talk about fractions to decimals and fractions to percent. Okay, so let's look at this. First of all, we have our fractions to decimals. Now, there's two different ways we can do this depending on what problem we're given. So the first and most easy way to do it is to write an equivalent fraction if the denominator is a factor of 10, 100, or 1000. So if that means that denominator, that bottom number, if it is a factor, remember a factor goes into a number. So if your denominator can go into 10, 100, or 1000, or if you can multiply it by something to get to one of those three, then we can do this method. And the reason that this is going to work is because when we look at decimals, if you look over here at our little cheat sheet, our decimal places, we have the ones place is our whole number. And then we have the tenths is one number after the decimal. The hundredths is two numbers after the decimal point. And then the thousandths is three numbers after the decimal point. So that's why if we can get a denominator of those, how we say that fraction is how we would write it in decimal form. Okay, so let's look at a couple examples of that. So here we have 2/5. Well, 5 goes into 10. I know it does because 5 times 2 equals 10. Now remember, what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. So if I wanted to write 2/5 as a fraction with 10 as my denominator, I would have 4/10. Now listen to what I just said there. I said 4/10. So that means that I'm going to put my decimal place and I'm going to have 4/10. And that's it. Okay, so if you have 4/10, your 4 goes in the tenths place. 4/10. All right. Now let's look at another one. We have 2 and 3 over 20. Now here we have a whole number 2. That doesn't really change a whole lot of what we do because remember when we're looking here, our whole number will be the same thing. We're not actually changing our whole number, but we do want to get our denominator, our bottom number of 20, to go into 10, 100, or 1000. Now, lucky for us, it goes into 100. So we know that 20 times 5 is 100. And what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top because this is a fraction. For it to be equivalent, we have to do the same thing. So, like I said, our whole number doesn't really change too. We're not really multiplying that by anything. But 20 times 5, we said, was 100. So if we multiplied the bottom by 5, we multiply the top, 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, so now we have 2 and 15 over 100. Now, when we look to see what that is as a decimal, well, 2 is our whole number, so it goes in the ones place, okay? 2, and it says 15 hundredths. 15 hundredths, so we're going to have 1, 5. So 2 decimal point 1, 5. Sorry, that kind of cut me off a little bit. I'll move it over just a little bit. Let's see, let's move all of this over, well, if I can. So, oops. Sorry, I'm struggling with this technology today. Anyway, so if we move this over, you can see it a little bit better. It just says 2 in decimal place 1, 5. 2 and 15 hundredths. That's how we would write that, okay? Now, that's not always going to be the case where our denominator is a factor of 10, 100, or 1000. So if that's not the case, what you need to do is you need to divide the numerator, which remember our numerator here is our, I'm going to type a little note here. Numerator is our top number, okay? And then remember our denominator is our bottom number. Okay, remember that's a number sign, not a hashtag. Okay. So here we have our top number divided by the bottom number, okay? So what that would look like is we would take our top number, and I'm going to show you how to do it using long division. So if you don't have a calculator, remember this is something that we did at the beginning of the year. So here we have 1 divided by 8. So what that would be like, look like is 1 divided by, I'm going to do this in a different color actually. We're going to do it in black. Okay, so we have, 1 divided by 8. Okay, well now remember, 8 does not go into 1, so we're going to have to figure out something here. Remember, when we can't divide here, we can add a decimal and a 0. And if you add a decimal down here, we have to add it into our answer choice right away. Okay, so 8 goes into 10. Yes, it goes into 10 one time. 8 times 1 is 8. Okay, and we can subtract here. 10 minus 8 is 2. Well, now I want to keep going, so I'm going to add another 0, because remember, if you add zeros after the decimal place, it does not change your answer. Okay, so 8 goes into 20 2 times. Okay, 2 times 8 is 16. So when we subtract that, we have 4. Now we can add one more 0, and I want you guys to go, like we've talked about the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. So I want you guys to go to the thousandths place when you are doing this, and that's what we'll round to. Okay, so 8 times 5 is actually 40. So we got lucky there. So 8 times 5 is 40. So we have 0 left over. So that being said, 1/8 as a fraction is written as 0.125, or, we would say that as 125 thousandths, because our last number is in the thousandths place. Okay, just gonna move this up and out of the way for my next problem. Okay, 7/9. So we're going to do the same exact thing here. We are going to take this and we're going to do 7 divided by 9. Okay, now 9 doesn't go into 7 just like before, so we got a 0. We can add a decimal and a 0 in our problem. Remember, we have that decimal up here too. So 9 goes into 70 7 times, and 7 times 9 is actually 63. And 70 minus 63 is 7. So what we're going to see here is if I add another 0 and bring it down, I'm going to get 70 again. Well, 9 still goes into 70 7 times. 7 times 9 is still 63. And 70 minus 63 is, ding, 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 still 7. So what we would see is if we kept adding zeros, we're going to keep getting 7 as our number. So this is actually what we call, remember, a repeating decimal. It's going to go on and on and on and on forever. Decimal point 7777777. So we are just going to say that it is 77 hundredths repeating. So to show that it's repeating, we just put that line over it. Okay, so that means that this is we have a repeating decimal here. Okay, remember that line means repeating decimal. Okay, so those are the ways that we are going to convert fractions to decimals. Now, fractions to percents, what we can do is write an equivalent fraction if the denominator is a factor of 100. Now remember, percent is always, always, always out of 100. That's why this is the case. So if we can put our denominator into 100, we want to do that because that will be our easiest method. Okay, so 10, we know 10 goes into 100. 10 times 10 is 100. What we do to the bottom, we must do to the top. So here we have 3 times 10 is 30. and 10 times 10 is 100, okay? So 30 out of 100, 30 hundredths, that is 30%, okay? Easy as that. So if you can get that denominator to be out of 100, because we know percent is always out of 100, then that is the easiest method, okay? Let's do one more here. So we have 2 3/4, and we want to get that into a percentage. Now, here's what we would do here. We would take this, and we want to get our denominator to be 100. So 4 goes into 100 evenly if we multiply by 25, okay? 4 times 25, because remember there's 4 quarters and $1, right? Okay. Now, so 3 times 25 is actually 75. So we have 2 wholes still though. 2 and 75 over 100. Okay, so now anytime you have a whole number, that means you have more than 100%. Okay, so for this case, you would take that whole number, and so we have 275% here, okay? Because we have 2 full 100%, plus we have our 75 out of 100, okay? I hope that makes sense. So if you're looking at it again, we've got 2 full 100%. We've already done 2 full laps, 100% of them. And we're 75% through the next. So we've done 275%. We've done more than that full thing, okay? So anytime you have a whole number, you're actually your percentage is gonna be higher than 100. But that won't happen super often. Just if it does, that's how you know that. Now, 2 goes into 100. We can do 2 times 50 is 100. So 9 times 50 would be 450. Because 9 times 5 is 45. All right, and then we have our 0, and then 2 times 50 is 100. So here we have 450 out of 100. So it's going to be kind of the same deal, even though it's written as an improper fraction. That's showing that we really do have 4 wholes and 50 out of 100. So this would actually end up being 450%. Okay, so that's way more than 100%, but it's like if you have a goal and you surpass it, okay? So if your goal was to work out for a minute a day and you work out for 450 minutes, then you've done 450% of your goal, okay? So you've just gone over it. Now, 5/8. 8 does not go into 100. So what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to divide the numerator by the denominator and then move the decimal to the right 2 places. So what that looks like here is we would do 5 divided by 8, and instead of doing the long division, I'm just going to do this on a calculator just for time's sake. So we have 5 divided by 8, and that gives us 0.625, okay? Now, when we do that, we're not done. This is not a percentage here. This just gives us our decimal. So then you move the decimal 2 places to the right, okay? Because we're like moving it over to the hundredths essentially. So we do 1, 2, and that's where our new decimal will go. So this is actually 62.5%. So that would be our answer, 62 5/10%. And there you go. Okay, so I just want to do, let's just do 2 examples here. So this one is actually pretty easy. 25 days out of 100, 25 out of 100. There's your fraction, okay? And lucky for us, this is already out of 100. So remember, we know that we can make this a decimal because it's in the 25 hundredths. So we would have decimal 25. 25 hundredths, 25 cents. Okay, and when we do that, remember, once we have that decimal form, we can move it 2 places to the right. So we'd have 25% here, okay? All right, and then let's just do one more. So here we have 15 girls out of a class of 50. So 15 out of 50. Okay, now remember, in order to change a fraction to a decimal, we want to get it over 100, 1,000, or 10 if we can. Luckily here, we can change this to over 100. And what did we multiply 50 by to get to 100? 2, ding, ding, ding. So we would do 15 times 2 equals 30. So this would be 30 out of 100, which is 30 hundredths. So 0.30 would be your decimal. And you could just put this as decimal point 3, as 3/10. Either one will work, okay? Because if you look at this here and we cover it up, we cover up those zeros, we have 3/10. Either way works totally fine. They're the same thing, okay? And now for percent, we move that decimal 2 times, and that gives us 30%, okay? All right, so that's it for converting fractions to decimals to percent. We will talk Monday about moving from decimals to percent back to fractions, okay? So I hope you guys have a great day.